Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah C. Gavagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World Collective Energy Share. So this one is going to be fun because this really sort of stretches our limits of understanding.
Press that 9.
Oh, it's so interesting. So,
I guess stretch that consciousness is a good
well,
way.
and stretch, it's not even stretch, it's stretching our remembrance of like,
Right.
we are like that we limit ourselves. The first of all, that we remember that we limit ourselves in terms of our perspective when we're doing it from here, right? From our bodies.
Right.
And like it's all that, we talk about, oh well, there's this part of my consciousness, and then there's this higher level. Good morning, Yasmin. Good morning, Nicole. There's this level of my consciousness, and then there's this one, and this, and it's almost like, and we talk about the concentricity of it and everything else, but then we think that this is the only part of ourselves that's embodied anywhere or like present anywhere at a time. And it's like,
Right.
well, and that just came to me. So, and this will all tie into star beings, what people call aliens, I call star beings. It ties into all facets of our soul families, all facets of ourself. But I was like out on, and I'll tell everybody how it started coming to me last week. Was I was sitting on my hammock out in my yard on a perfect day, at lunchtime, and I decided to do my meditation out there because it was just gorgeous. And I'm like, and I get some great meditations out there. And so I'm sitting there and I close my eyes and there are star beings everywhere. In fact, there were 3 that were standing right up next to the hammock, like waiting for me to pay attention to them. And I could feel them all through the woods and the park, and I could feel them all throughout the planet. And I was just like, okay, so what's this about? And it was through the communication, like at first it was, okay, so it was like sort of shaking me into this place of, or shaking myself out of this place of denial, right? Shaking myself out of this place
Right.
of centricity of here, right? Is that okay? So we get into this from here, and then we talk about things like astrology, right? And we talk about in astrology how like the stars affect us, which is really all a reflection back to us of what's inside of us, right?
Right.
But we get so myopic, we get so into the micro of our own individual lives that we forget that we put that whole thing of the victimhood, which we've talked about, of
Right.
oh my god, Mercury's retrograde, or this is retrograde, or this is square this, or this is trying this, and this da, 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 and or the full moon, and there's no judgment, no judgment on that, but it's like
No judgment on that at all.
but it's become this thing, right, where people talk about that a lot, which is okay, great for the awareness. But the thing that I'm talking about all the time, you and I talk about this a lot with people all the time, which is remember that is only a reflection back to us of what's already going on with us. So it has nothing to do with, it's not, oh, I'm going to have this because the full moon is like this. But instead you turn it around to, oh, well, this has come up for me. This is what the energy in the cycle of energy is for me right now. And so that's what's going to reflect back to me in the full moon, right?
Right.
Because it is all interrelated. It is all part of the multiverse, and it does remind us that it is all interrelated. But then we talk about constellations, we talk about the signs, and those are all different stars. And what I was shown by the star beings back to the hammock was, remember that it's all interrelated, right? So each star, which our sun is a star, we forget, right,
Right.
has its own energy that it's to be as part of the symphony of in this multiverse, right?
Right.
And so like, and then I was like, oh, and then I had this really weird brief thought in my mind, which was like, oh, I wonder what everybody else calls us. Our sun.
Right. Right. What's the name of our sun somewhere else?
Right. And the thing is, and what is our energy, like the energy of our sun and our solar system to be reflective and representative of?
Yeah. What happens on in another multiverse when we go in retrograde?
Exactly. Well, exactly.
Right.
So, I mean, when we talk about like, yeah, the planets would be like more of our inner stuff that's reflecting back to us because it's within our solar system. And then
Right.
the signs or whatever, um, or where the planets are in respect to where the signs are in the sky, which is really what that's all about. That is how those energies reflect through the planet and the constellation. So you think about that. And then you think, okay, well, and so it was a reminder, well, we do that for others as well. And so the thing that is going on is there's some massive shifting going on in the multiverse. And we think that it's just here. We think that it's just in our day-to-day lives. We think
Right.
it's just in this country. We think it's just in this world. And yet it's really not. Like, that's what the star beings were like connecting with me about, which is, remember that we're all in this together. We are all in this together. This is all because we're all each other, right?
Right.
So the
Right.
first day it was looking at that, looking at how, okay, so we're holding this energy to represent in the solar system that reflects back into other parts of the facets of the divine that we have all representative of the different parts of the multiverse, right?
Right.
In the galaxy, in beyond the galaxy, like in fact our galaxy then has its own signature energy too. Like it's just like it just, when I had that, it was almost like I pulled out the zoom to like bajillionth of,
Right.
of a speck. And then I was like, oh, of course, right? And then it was like, oh, well, yeah, that puts a lot of things in perspective. That was the first day. Then the next day I was in meditation, and then I was sort of connecting with all that, going, okay, so what's there for me to remember about this now too?
Right.
Is that, well, remember, this is just a speck of your consciousness that is embodied here.
Right.
That your consciousness is so big. Of course, you're not just going to be embodied here. You're embodied in all these other places too,
Right.
right? Which, well, it makes total sense. Like, why wouldn't we do that?
Right. Right. Exactly.
Like we have to, like, it's like we've got to wrap our minds around, like in many cases we talk about wrapping our minds around other lifetimes, right?
Right.
And so like that, and then we think that's it,
Right.
because
Right.
other lifetimes is really just a speck of our consciousness that incarnates here. And this isn't even going out to the full thing. We're talking about like individual souls. Like, it's like we can split ourselves any which way, and this is such a small part, and then we put these partitions up and then we forget. Well, how many of us, I mean, I know I have plenty of times over the years in my dream state woken up in a completely different planet, a completely different universe, a completely
Right.
different place, and I'm going, and I wake up thinking, oh, that was such a cool dream, I wish I could be there. And it's like, but you
Yeah.
are there.
Right. Right.
So then that's where we got into this conversation, because it was like, well, all right. So then my guidance in meditation was then connect and pull out the partitions between all the other parts of you that are incarnate, or in form, or however you want to call it, someplace else in the multiverse right now. And this isn't even like going out beyond the individual cells. So I was like, okay, so I started reaching out to that. Wow.
Right.
Wow. Because what was it? I can't remember. You worded it so well when we were talking on Friday.
Oh, wow.
Um,
I did take some notes. Changing the core of ourselves by connecting that core to all of our other cores in the multiverse.
it was like, there was something else you said too. And I didn't write it down either, because I wrote that down. We were talking about when I was called to do that. Even just talking about it, you can feel the entire hologram just shift.
Right. I also wrote down expanding our holographic version of ourselves.
Yeah.
But I think we've already talked about that.
Yeah. It's allowing those parts of ourself to, like, be unpartitioned, right?
Right.
The
So we talked about how in the beginning it feels like a symphony tuning up where everybody's trying to find their perfect note, and you're connecting across the multiverse to those other parts of you and connecting in, and it's tuning up, and it's like once everybody slides in and
oh,
makes that connection
I
and
remember.
hits that chord across the multiverse, it's like the expansion
Well, and
is
we don't reach our entire note until we connect to all parts of ourselves, right?
right,
Right.
right,
But the other thing that reminds me of going back to is I asked the star beings like what that was, what this is all about and why it was important to remember this right now. And it was, well, because everything's shifting. Everything, we're all shifting, like, right?
right,
And it's like, so the earth has a frequency that she is, which is what we're all a part of, sub parts of that frequency incarnate here. And her frequency is changing, like her note is changing.
right, right,
And so her note from the very, very big picture of everything is shifting. Say, let's just be very simple about it. Say it's going from like a G sharp to an A, right? Or even a G sharp to an A sharp, or it doesn't even matter. So it's going up another step, it's going up to another note, a new note altogether. And in doing that, she's got to shake off everything that doesn't
right,
align in that
right,
note. But the thing is, that's going on all throughout the multiverse. It's going through the whole galaxy. It's going through like everything beyond that and other dimensions. And so that's why we feel such a shaking to our core.
right, right. Well,
The whole symphony is tuning up. That's where we got into tuning up because we're talking about, because it's like we're tuning into another key altogether.
right. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Well, and imagine the earth is shifting. We're shifting in response and in unison, and we're connecting with pieces and parts of us in other places that are also shifting and expanding, and making that connection makes that expansion exponential.
Easier because you don't hear a note that you're not listening to, kind of thing.
Right, right,
Right. So when we say, so the first step is like that acknowledgement of, okay, taking our eyes off of the minutia, right? It's like saying, oh, this one little cell in my body is not quite blah blah blah, or it's uncomfortable, and then it's like, well, yeah, but my body's like, if I set the whole intention or the creation of my body being in alignment, that helps to align everything, like line everything up.
right,
So if we allow ourselves to like connect with all facets of ourselves, because guess what? Oh, this is what started coming to me this morning. So really, remember I've been asking for years what this twin flame thing is about, right? Because
right,
and I got, well, in actuality, in really plain understanding, what I was getting this morning is it has to do with we are embodied in all these like different in all these different places, or in form in different ways in different places throughout the multiverse. The twin flame is like embodying ourselves here in different bodies but in the same note, right?
right,
So it's like, what would you do? Because remember I said, well, what would you do? Like the question that came to me, like, or that I was thinking about is, what would I do if I came face to face with myself? Like, what would that feel like? Would that be really bizarre? But that's really what the twin flame thing is.
right. Exactly, exactly.
And so
Right.
we have all of that stuff going on right now, right? And we have all that stuff going on. We have a lot of people talking about twin flame stuff or whatever. And I'll tell you what, that those who are really conscious about it actually have more of a um, a, a very huge leap and opportunity for leaping in their consciousness with that face-to-face contact with their twin flame. And I'm not talking about anything like romantic or anything else, but it's this frequency thing, right?
Right.
Which causes an extreme amount of friction until you finally attune to your own frequency, right?
Right.
And smooth it all out. So that could be one of the most irritating people in your life. One of the most like, push pull, the ego's like, ah! and then and then like we were just like like a week or two ago, right?
Right.
But that's like, so when we do that, and the thing is, ultimately we're all the same. Ultimately, we are all part of that consciousness, right?
Right.
But the thing is, we're jumping from like the anthill to the multiverse, and there's steps in between that we've set up for us to like remove partitions from, so that we can
Exactly.
see more clearly, right? And as we see the whole self more clearly, so when we take out the partitions with the intention to be able to connect, and the creation of connecting with all facets of ourself, all facets of ourself that is informed throughout the multiverse, to make sure we're all in tune. So here's the question that many have asked me: can you have more than one twin flame? Well, the twin flame is just another embodiment of yourself.
Right. So of course.
Of course. But typically, my understanding is, because this is what all just dumped into me this morning, and I was like, like, wait, just wait until 9:30. Of course, but the thing is that we don't typically embody here together at the same time, because we have not, for a very long time, had the consciousness of being able to consciously acknowledge and align, not align, um,
Attune.
attune ourselves to ourself in the physical, face to face, in this density.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like, and then this really helps us though to really accelerate that understanding and that expansion to a place where we can do that. And then say whether, like, because once we really do embrace our multidimensional traveling
Mm-hmm.
and shifting, we will more and more come to face to face with ourself in all kinds of different forms, right? And then once we can actually accept all that, that's when we really start accepting that you and I are, say, the same person, the same consciousness, or, you know, like, and you start expanding out. But then it's like this other step, this intermediary step, that's like, okay, but we're so unused to doing it this way, and we're so like in we're so individually centric, you know, in the
Right.
density in these bodies, that we forget that, oh wait, there's all these other facets of me out there
Right.
that are embodied in form someplace in some way simultaneously, which is all, and then of course you expand out to it's all simultaneous, right?
Right. Right. Life's everything. Right.
But it's just like almost like baby step,
Right.
baby leap.
Well, and if you think about it, because since all these pieces and parts that we're talking about are embodied in some way, there's an ego associated with it. So at that point, our ego has to evolve or grow, or however you want to say it, to understand that there are more than one ego involved.
Well, but or it's really just, actually it's really just more than one facet of the same ego, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
That
Right.
needs to all like assimilate too. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Ooh,
Exactly.
that can be like a big like.
Right. Which is I think probably equally as difficult as, making the leap to understanding that, okay, there are these other pieces and parts to me, and then having the ego weigh in on that and say, oh, well, there are those pieces and parts of me too.
Right. Well, and plus the ego is different in different kinds of embodiments and different kinds of
Right.
forms, right?
Right.
So it's not just the same kind of ego. It's also a similar, like, it's almost like the ego has multiple levels of consciousness too. Oh, that's an
Right.
interesting thing to explore, right? To assimilate. So Nicole said, wouldn't coming face to face with yourself be awesome? A strong sense of self-love and acceptance, I imagine, would be orgasmic. Or not.
Right.
Because what
Depends on
many
what you
people,
see in the mirror.
which is the whole twin flame thing that people are not understanding about, is that's what I've said from the beginning, without understanding this bigger part, or remembering this bigger part, has been, it is the same exact frequency as you. So if you cannot look at yourself like flat out in the mirror with no filters, no veils, no anything, and say I love you and mean it, then that twin flame is going to trigger everything that's left that you're hiding from yourself. So it
Right.
can be So like that's really what, and this morning I was like, oh my God, my big light bulb of the week is the twin flame thing and this whole embodiment across the multiverse. And I'm like, so we of course have a whole bunch of those twin flames. We have, it's just different facets of us. And I'm like, now, because I've had the whole weekend to sort of like ruminate in that and allow it to open up and sit in that. Now I'm just like, all right, come on over. I'll come over. Let's have a party and get together. It would be so fascinating. Because, we can look at I mean, wow, it'd be so fascinating to meet myself in some other form, right? And to
Right.
recognize that and to be able to see different facets of myself that I cannot see through the embodiment that I have here, right?
Right.
Yeah, good thing I have a sense of self. Yeah. Well, and the thing is though, and if you have even a little tiny crumb, it comes up with the twin flame. That's really been a lot of the stuff I've dealt with many of my clients over the years. Is I know because I had that experience myself, but it is one of the most incredibly awesome loves to have, because it's not like a romantic love. It is this acceptance love that's a completely different thing. People think it's supposed to be romantic, and I'm like, yeah, no, because I know plenty of people like it's not a romantic love here. With me I've known people who are like father daughter sisters. I've known mother daughters,
Right.
mother sons, all different kinds of, and just like friends and stuff like that, very close friends. But what happens is those relationships will manifest to shake us up, and I'm like, oh, now I understand why it's supposed to shake us up, to see that reflection in ourselves, so that we're then ready to accept the reflection of all these other, because just think about this.
It's like practice.
Right, it's like practice, because if we look at ourselves in the same kind of embodiment, right, and it shakes up any crumbs that we have underneath, which it does it like nothing else does, right? Think about, so that's from the same perspective, same density, same form, right? Think about coming up against, not against, with yourself, like facing yourself in a different form that has different aspects to it entirely or whatever,
Right.
and having that frequency totally, attuned, because it's the same frequency as you.
Right.
That could really shake up.
Right.
Shake a lot of things.
Right. Especially if it's like a practical situation, like if you're struggling to overcome a certain fear,
Mm-hmm.
and you run in and you connect with that aspect of yourself somewhere else who has already accomplished that, overcoming that fear, and you connect in with that feeling of that supposed need you have, just instantly fitting, and imagine the expansion you experience based on just that one little aspect.
Right. Or even just what I'm feeling, or I'm sort of seeing, but I don't really have something to compare it with, so it's really challenging. It's like, or just seeing different parts of our own hologram that feed into the fear that we create here, right, in this density, that we wouldn't even know to address. You know what I'm saying? If we just say it here in this level of our
Right. Oh, right. Exactly.
so that it's like, oh, here are just different facets of the hologram of, oh, if this is where the crumb actually lies, is here.
Imagine that.
But I don't even know how to see that, because we don't have any point of reference here, because of the laws of physicality here incarnate and on Earth, right?
Right.
But here in this part of the multiverse, say on whatever, this blue planet, where the laws of physics are different, or they just have a completely different makeup or whatever, there's this entirely different presentation that totally brings it around to the front, that you wouldn't even know how to do that with here. Like,
Right.
so it's this whole point of, look at how accelerated now in allowing ourselves to connect with all those parts of ourself, right?
Right.
That are in form throughout the multiverse, to pull out the partitions, to allow ourselves to actively connect and meld, or remember that wholeness, how fast and accelerated we can resolve all the crap that's holding us back. Like, bam.
Exactly.
In such a complete way. Like,
Right.
here's the answer to how many times we've asked, and how many times may have asked, why does this keep on circling back around? Why does this keep on coming back around? Well, because there's an aspect of it in the hologram of yourself that you can't even see, because it doesn't even present itself here in this physicality. You got to connect to that part of you.
Right.
So, and I was like, oh, when I started seeing that, I was like, oh, and the way we see it is when we are incarnate in that separation, in that particular form, and as in contrast to this particular form, it's just so fascinating. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be
It's like a whole new way, and a whole new level to play in.
Yeah, a whole new playground. Yeah.
Right.
Ooh, so once we did, even just talking about it on Friday, it was, oh, look, like I can just feel that all this coming through. It's been, yeah, and honestly, I've had to just sit on that this week. I didn't even really get to do a lot of meditation on it because there's a lot that I was doing here, but how powerful.
Right.
And it can be daunting though, like, so did the ego, right? Because you're talking about different facets of the ego. Well, now the ego's got to pull out partitions between itself.
Right. And all along it's been saying, no, I'm the complete one.
Right.
You're the one who's got all the problems. I'm the complete one.
Right. Well, and because what does the ego do? It explores separation identity, right?
Right.
So I'm saying, okay, well, what if we went back to, and we would go back to the core identity of this soul that spreads across the multiverse, and bring it all together, all the facets together. Oh, what a resolution! But there could be a little bit of resistance.
Right. I would think so. Yeah. Safety comes to mind.
Yeah, the ego's perception of it, right?
Right. Exactly.
Oh, no. This is me. This is mine.
Nope.
Mine.
Right.
More lessons of that. But, and then I was like, oh, well, of course that's what the twin flame thing is. That just makes so much sense. And, I've been asking this for years, like, okay, so what's the purpose? What's the purpose? Like, I understand what it does, but what's the purpose? Because people asking me that all the time. But then once we accept those parts of ourself, I think it feels like once we start, and what did we do? You and I have started the creation of that, accepting the whole hologram of ourselves, right?
Right.
Of remembering the wholeness of that hologram. I don't know, that was sometime not too long ago, in the recent months or whatever.
Right.
So that's part of why probably this came up, was, okay, so this is the part of you this is how to look at yourself in a different way, to start to see the hologram. Because it's like the hologram's been coming in, but then it's like, well, I don't know how to see it. I don't know how to understand it. And it's like, oh, well, this way. And more people have done things like what we call past life regressions, but are really just like accessing ourselves to different facets of our consciousness, whether it's
almost like consciousness expansions.
Right, because we did that together in March, right? And none of that had to do with other lifetimes. It had to do with us going into other dimensions of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Well, now that makes a lot of sense. Like, duh.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so and what did we have that experience? Like, I remember the experience when you guys were working with me, which was going into one dimension to get, the doorway into another part, like, and it's like, is a dimension or a dimensional part of me, right? One part to another part, to get this one little, box, so to speak, that has this in it that needs to move or be shifted or released or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, Nicole, exactly. What's the lesson? What do I need to learn? Yep. What do I see or not see? Yeah. So, yeah, that's exactly the point. So the more we let go of things, and I've noticed, it's funny, I was teaching somebody how to do past life regressions a while back. And so I had them do one on me. And it was really interesting because it took me to a completely different part of the multiverse. And it was very hard for me to say anything because I literally just hopped over and my consciousness was completely different. And now it's sort of like, oh, well, now I get that because that's just
Right,
where I
right.
am. That's where I am. Maybe now, simultaneously, wherever, it doesn't matter because outside of, time is just relative to how we want to measure, right?
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
So when we take out time, it's all simultaneous. And like say on some galaxy, in some galaxy far, far
Far,
away,
far away.
um, like how do you compare time there? You don't, because whatever, if they have some kind of measurement, it would be so completely different than ours. And
Right,
there's
right.
no like it's apples to oranges, it's just a completely different representation. So it's irrelevant to the comparative connection of the self. So then it stops, you stop having to consider it, is it a past life, is it another time, or is it just
Right,
another part of me in another place?
right.
So sort of some mind expansive stuff. Or maybe I just had some special mushrooms, who knows?
Right, right. Your hammock's right above the mushrooms.
That's right. There's some kind of, yeah, let out some special spores or something.
Right.
But what an expansion, right? To sit with. I mean, like, we were talking about on Friday. It was like, oh, well, just talking about it, you can just feel like, oh, there I am. Oh, once I did that in meditation, excuse me, once I did that in meditation, it was like, there's going to be a bit of this because it's like, and funny enough, Friday night I had a session with a client, didn't talk about any of this,
Right.
and went to do the session and did the energy work part of the session with the client. And as soon as I got out there, I got, yeah, well, let her connect with all of her parts
Right.
or inform elsewhere because that'll really help her with this issue. And I'm like, oh, of course, like duh. So we
Right.
did that, and oh my God, it felt amazing. And she's like, afterward, I started explaining to her, and luckily she's um, versed in all of this. So
Right.
I'm
Right.
not surprised when I come out with stuff like this. But it was, yeah, and she PM'd me over the weekend, and she goes, I am so giggly this weekend. She goes, I feel like I found a part of myself, and it's interesting. So that's for us. I guess that's what we're gonna do today,
I think so.
to allow ourselves to remember like consciously and actively connect with all parts of our individual souls that we have chosen to have in form in separation concurrently here, everywhere, so that yeah, oh, that just feels, oh, I just talk about it, feels really good. So
Well, and what just occurred to me is what an aspect of self-love this
mhm.
is connecting with all those parts and allowing all of that nurturing between the parts to be remembered. Oh, that feels great.
Yeah, my whole back went electric when you said that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is the ultimate self-love, to allow that all to come together. I mean, that's the wholeness. Wow, that
Right.
feels great.
Right. And the way that I'm sort of seeing this is that we see ourselves in form. Yeah, see, I just want to yawn for like 5 minutes.
Uh,
Oh, that's such a shift right there. Oh. Um, of course, however it is for us to remember and see and complete lessons within ourself, within within the hologram, that's how we, take form. That's
right,
how to reflect back to ourselves,
right,
right? And so, uh, and then it happens as it has to, and then it doesn't, like, because then there's been situations where twin flames have walked out,
right,
and it's like, well, that was the reflection you needed, and now you don't need it anymore. But we're so like personally attached to that, we think it's a person.
right,
It's really not. It's just an aspect of ourselves, right?
right,
And so, of course, so we could have, 5 twin flames embodied here if we wanted to
hmm,
simultaneously. We just would have that's quite a challenge to present
well,
ourselves.
and I guess if you pull out enough partitions and you connect in with the I am everyone, you have
All those twin flames, right? Which is what we,
billions of twin
which is
flames.
what we've always said. But see, what I sort of feel like with this is there's these intermediary steps of seeing
Right,
ourself, right? Seeing ourselves, seeing our soul, our own soul, right? Which is interesting because there are people out there that say, oh, well, not everybody has a soul, like only some people are part of a soul. And it's like, no, we're all part of, like, it's all like, most are not like an individual soul. We're part of our, what I always call the I am of ourself, right? Which
right.
is the big kahuna of ourself. Um, and so how that's it's just, yeah, we just try not to think about it too much because then it gets, the mind tries to define and everything else. But
Right. Put it
this
in a box.
this puts a lot of clarity on understanding it without too much of a box, because it's sort of like, oh, well, this is just another facet of me. And
Right.
it's like it's almost like it was important for me and us to start seeing that now. So I basically got the flick from start being friends and family, or who knows, that could have been me.
That's right. That was the aspect of you came face to face with.
And and then so that we do take that next step to recognize that we're all the same, right? It's
Right.
like these are like filling in between blanks that we know, and we know when we accept, but there were things to resolve that lay hidden in those facets of ourselves
Right.
that were important for us to resolve, to recognize, to see and resolve and embrace. Yeah, so all of that
Yeah.
today,
Right now.
right now.
Right
Yeah,
now.
all done, and then we're done. It's over.
Check that box.
Check that box. Oh, okay. You ready? Yeah. So
I'm
whatever it
ready.
is for us to be able to do that, all with gentleness and ease and fun and love and joy, you know,
Right.
open up the hologram, open up your personal hologram, your entire self,
Right.
so that you can see it in all its glorious facets. And I always think of it as a multifaceted gem. Think of the whole divine consciousness as the big majillion faceted gem, but we're that within ourselves too. So first for us to see that, and then for us
Right.
to remember the whole. So all of that. All right, you ready? I'm already tingly, so
I know I am too.
let's just go. Well, I got nothing to say. We can just go do that all day.
I know. I know. Oh, wow.
Oh, I'm dizzy after that.
The very first image I saw was, I don't know if you remember the party decorations that are like the flat, two pieces of cardboard, like in a semicircle,
Oh, you open up.
and you open it up and make like a ball out of it, the honeycomb tissue paper or
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah.
And it was like I was doing that with myself, with my hologram of who I believed I was. And I mean, it was just like, at first it was very overwhelming, and then it was like, then I could go in and go, oh, well, this little piece over here needs some fine tuning. And you can just envision the little cells of the honeycomb not quite
Right.
right, or didn't open quite
Right.
right. And
Or I was looking for that.
right. And boy, that was so powerful. That
It
was
really
so
was.
powerful. And then it's like, once I felt that it was, expanded, then it would expand out from that. And it was just almost speechless thinking about it. That was awesome.
Yeah. I don't even have words for what I saw, but something similar. It was disorienting coming back here because I was truly seeing in, well, for lack of a better explanation, in all directions at once.
Right. Right.
And when I was coming back here, I got really disoriented for a minute, like, what?
How do I not do that?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
I was like, oh, so freeing. So amazing. Oh, yeah. Something to sit in today and for the week.
And for the remainder of time.
Oh, yeah. For forever. Yes.
Right.
Mm. Yeah, I started seeing things I can't even, yeah, it was nice. Or just remembering things. Well, sorry for the little tiny topic for the day,
Right.
but sit in this for this week. And you know what? Note your dreams, because that's where we start opening up faster, right? Or we remember more of. And meditation, and just take notes of insights that come to you, or even just sketch them or symbolize them, or something that'll start to help you anchor that all together as it comes. But allowing that, like I said, my client was like, oh my God, I've been giggly all weekend. Like, it's just a completely different vibration that bubbles up.
Right. Right.
So have fun with it. Like, okay, well, let me be this. And then, as I am this, let me remember
Right.
how to do that and employ that in my hologram here. And how does that,
Right.
function? Ooh, excuse me.
Such possibilities.
So many possibilities. All right. Well, now we're going to let you go. Thank you for joining us. This is Angela Coulter,
There's Sieg Avignoni.
and we'll see you next week on Ascended World. Have a great one.